Chapter 3001 opens with Carrie returning to the villa she now lives in, a place provided by Mr. Lab, who insists she adopt the identity of Mrs. Lab. The villa, lavishly decorated and filled with luxurious gifts from Mr. Lab, symbolizes the glided cage in which she finds herself trapped. Despite the wealth and status that come with this new identity, she is consumed by a deep sense of unease and fear, particularly in anticipation of Mr. Lab's arrival at the villa that evening. Her relationship with Mr. Lab is fraught with tension. Initially, she harbored ambitions of replacing the real Mrs. Lab, believing she could conquer Mr. Lab and bend him to her will. However, these illusions were shattered during a previous encounter with him, nearly strangled her in a fit of rage, leaving her terrified and acutely aware of the precariousness of her situation. This moment of violence served as a stark reminder that Mr. Love's affection is conditional and that any deviation from his expectations could result in dire consequences. Despite her fear, Carrie continues to play the role assigned to her, trying to convince herself that Mr. Love's generosity, his gifts of clothing, jewelry, and money, might indicate some level of affection. However, the memory of his violent outburst and the cold, murderous look in his eyes keep her grounded in reality, knowing that her life is constantly hanging by a thread. As she arrives at the villa, she hesitates to get out of the car, lost in thought and overwhelmed by the emotions swirling within her. The bodyguard who drives her patiently waits for her to compose herself. This small interaction highlights Carrie's awareness that her position as Mrs. Lamb is not truly hers. The villa is not her home, and she does not belong in this world. Her true home, she believes, is the Newman family mansion, a place she feels unjustly deprived by her half sister Cameron. Her resentment toward Cameron runs deep. She is bitter about how her parents never transferred the mansion's ownership to themselves, leaving it legally in Cameron's name. This oversight has allowed Cameron to assert control over the property, much to Carrie's frustration. In her mind, if the mansion were in her parents' name, she would have had a rightful claim to it, and Cameron wouldn't have been able to evict her so easily. Finally, after a moment of reflection and self reassurance, Carrie steels herself and enters the villa. Before crossing the threshold, she takes a moment to adjust her appearance, checking herself in a small mirror to ensure she looks perfect. This act is symbolic of her attempt to maintain control over her situation, even if only superficially. As she walks into the villa, she tries to project confidence, despite the fear that lingers beneath the surface. Carrie is only in her early 20s, a time of life often associated with blossoming youth and potential. Yet, her experiences have forced her into a world of manipulation and fear, stripping away the innocence and freedom typically enjoyed by someone her age. The chapter closes with a sense of foreboding as Carrie steps into the villa, knowing that the man she fears and relies on awaits her inside.